I think what you're going to see is just like the ETF flows for Bitcoin and then ETH turn on and are really, really robust. And I think that's kind of what the market is sniffing out in the past 24 hours is like crypto's legal, institutions are able to, participate. There's no knuckle wrapping that comes with actually allocating to crypto in your portfolio.
All right, everyone, this is a message for my DGen listeners out there. If you are getting scalped paying expensive fees to perp dexes, I highly recommend that you check out Index Co-op's new leverage suite. Now, whenever it comes to leverage, do your own research. This is not financial advice. Don't bet more than you can lose, all that good stuff. But if you are going to lever up, you might as well not pay an arm and a leg for it. You can get leverage on BTC and ETH with built-in liquidation perfection, now available on Base, Mainnet, and Arbitrum. So click the link in the bottom of the show notes and head over and check them out today, and you'll hear more from them later in the program. Hey everyone, this episode is brought to you by Supra, the vertically integrated L1 for super dApps. They have a very cool new product coming out called Supra Containers. So head over to supra.com. That's supra.com/containers. So if you're building on an L1 and it feels a little bit crowded, or the complexity of L2 and L3s are getting you down, just head over to Supra. They'll get you sorted. Thank me later. Hey everyone, this episode is brought to you by Fuel Labs, who's launching Fuel Ignition, a new high-performance Ethereum L2 powered by the Fuel VM. Now you're going to be hearing all about Ignition later in the program, but for now, what you need to know is they are launching phase 2 of their points program. So click the link at the bottom of the show notes and head over, start experimenting, messing around on Fuel today. Thank me later.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Bell Curve. Before we jump in, quick disclaimer. The views expressed by my co-host today are their personal views, and they do not represent the views of any organization with which the co-hosts are associated with. Nothing in the episode is construed or relied upon as financial, technical, tax, legal, or other advice. You know the deal. Now, let's jump into the episode.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to another Roundup edition of Bell Curve. You got Michael's 1 and 2, Vance. Fellas, welcome to the Golden Bull.
Game is on.
Era of
always
the
has
Golden
been.
Bull. Yeah. Vance,
I'm
I was
ready.
expecting a hat today. Where's the black hat?
No need to add insult to injury. I think everyone's with the program now. Turns out the Democratic platform was just complete horseshit. There were no Liz Cheney Republicans. There's been enough takes on it, but it's time to put some very pro-crypto policy into place and run it back turbo.
All right, so let's start to break this down, because there's obviously the election and there's a broader societal discussion here, but I'd love to focus a lot on the crypto side of things, because I think it has pretty seismic implications for the industry, especially on a 1 to 4 year time horizon. So just to give a really quick summary of what happened during the election is there were obviously there's a lot of chatter about the election going in. People thought it was potentially split 50-50, not you guys on this podcast. So flowers to you for getting that absolutely right, because it was a complete sweep. So not only did Trump win, he won all 7 swing states. He also got the popular vote, which is the first time a Republican has done that since 2004. So 2 full decades. There was also a sweep the Senate turned red. And the House, I believe at the time of this recording, is still up in the air, but the Republicans are leading.
Right? It's not official in the House. There are, I think, 208, maybe 209 Republican seats that have been called, and I think 196 Democratic seats that have been called. The expectation is that the Republicans will also take the House based off of where a lot of these votes are coming in. As you can imagine, the votes that are coming in are still in rural counties and rural districts, historically more Republican leaning and probably slower to collect, but they're at most of them are at 75, 85%, 95% vote. But it is expected that the Republicans will take the House as well. Turns out, as we talked about probably 2 months ago on this podcast, that the Gallup poll actually was highly accurate in predicting where everything would land, which is about a 4% popular vote swing, and that Trump would win.
There was not the point of the story at all, but I'm sure you guys probably heard about the French trader on Polymarket who made a bunch of money. And first of all, I don't know if you saw this, but it looks like they're trying to ban Polymarket in France. now. So that was their takeaway this election. But
Who
it's
cares?
interesting.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Let's go past politics. I'm over it.
Okay, cool. Well, this is actually just a cool polling story. What he commissioned his own poll. So he found that there was a lot of bias in terms of when you ask people who you were going to vote for, but much less bias when you ask who do you think your neighbor is going to vote for. And so he commissioned his own poll of who do you think your neighbor is going to vote for, and the results were overwhelmingly. I just thought that was interesting. And then he put a lot of money to work. So kind of an interesting betting story there.
All right, putting a fork in it.
All right, cool. Let's talk about the impact that this could have on crypto as an industry here. And this is where I want to broaden it out to past even just the election of Trump versus Kamala. But another thing that happened is the super PAC Fair Shake actually was pretty successful in terms of electing pro crypto senators and congresspeople. The big race that ended up tipping in favor of a pro crypto candidate was in Ohio, where you had Sherrod Brown, who is the head of the House Financial Services Committee, and he got ousted by a new senator, Bernie Moreno. I've told this to both of you guys. This is a funny moment for me. He was my next door neighbor growing up. It's like the weirdest small world connection of all time. I learned to swim in his pool growing up. Went to school with his kids. But yeah, he won. He won. So what do you guys? I'll just turn it over to you guys. What do you think the implications for crypto as an industry are from this win?
Very positive. I think the one comment that I saw was a White House staffer basically said something to the effect of, it's time for the Democrats to move past crypto. It's clear that it's not going away, and this is just a losing battle if we choose to fight it. And I think that sentiment shift is recognized universally across the board. Even Paul Graham came out. I don't think that this is accurate, but he said that going against crypto was one of the downfalls of the Democratic platform this year. I think it's equivalent to saying that the ocean is filled up by rain. Yes, there is water that is put into the ocean when it rains, but that's not the reason why that the Democrats actually, didn't win this election. It's one of them, but it's not the reason. And I think broadly, Fair Shake, I mean, they put money to work in the right ways. Hats off to them. They absolutely crushed it. The other thing that's notable about Fair Shake is that they've already raised, I think, $75 million for 2026. And so they're not going away either. This is going to be an always-on platform promoting crypto. And the really cool thing I think is, and we talked about it on this podcast, yes, the president, White House was it's going to be an important role for crypto going forward. But the fact that the Senate flipped likely means that Tim Scott will be the head of Senate banking. And what that implies as well, and he's mentioned this before, is that he actually wants to start a subcommittee within Senate banking for digital assets. And being able to have, we thought it was a big moment when we had just even a floor vote in the House of Representatives for a crypto specific bill with Fit 21 in May. We thought that was, the industry really, having its coming out party. But imagine what will happen when we have a subcommittee just dedicated to digital assets and digital asset legislation. A very, very, very constructive moment for the industry.
I think my take is like what's going on in group chats and like policy stuff on our end is people are suggesting who the CFTC head should be. People are suggesting who the SEC chair should be. And the industry is getting a lot of input, as with many traditional finance players as well. But I mean, it's looking like it's going to be an overwhelmingly positive regulatory body as well as legislation. There's chatter about we get rid of SAB 121, which is actually a really shitty rule for anybody that tries to custody crypto on their balance sheet. So if you're a major investment bank, you have to hold $1 of cash for every dollar of crypto in order to actually custody it. So there's a lot of, just like it's going to make it a lot easier to actually put crypto into these major institutions. And there's also some accounting rules with how you hold it that are going to go away, which is great. So you kind of have like the first day, first week priorities done. The other stuff that looks like it's on the agenda is the Bitcoin strategic reserve. Like there's been a lot of chatter around that. Like we'll see when that, is real. And then I think the ETFs is kind of the other side of it. We've seen less movement on that. Like I still think it's going to be a long process for the XRPs or the Litecoins or the Solanas of the world to get listed. And all of the appointments are really going to he takes over January 20th. And then there's this whole appointment process, which probably takes till May or midsummer. That's kind of when the other appointees in previous administration have come in. And so like day one for this like new SEC, new CFTC is probably like June, maybe May. And I think what you're going to see is just like the ETF flows for Bitcoin and then ETH turn on and are really, really robust. And I think that's kind of what the market is sniffing out in the past 24 hours is like crypto's legal, institutions are able to, participate. There's no, knuckle wrapping that comes with actually allocating to crypto in your portfolio. What do you buy? You probably got a bit of BTC already. I think people are now buying ETH. And the next ETF, I would assume, probably end of 2025, maybe mid 2026, maybe even later than that. Like it's going to take a while, but there's really positive policy on the horizon. And I think the last part is like all the Wells notices, all the cases that are outstanding with Uniswap, with Coinbase, with I think Kraken too. Those are probably going to be, just forgotten about. Maybe you see some announcement about them settling or the court being settled, or the case being settled out of court, but this is the next and biggest part is like DeFi is now legal. DeFi has been illegal for the past, however long we've been doing it, de facto illegal. But now that it's not, like a lot of these teams are going to turn on fee switches. They're going to do, more creative, more risky things with their tokens. The aperture has widened significantly, which is why all these DeFi tokens are rallying now.
And just to be clear, we're not saying that DeFi is illegal and has been currently. It's just that nobody has known based off of the fact that it's regulation by enforcement by a policy or via policy. And I think that the fact that you can assume that the whack-a-mole game of did you get regulated, did you get a Wells notice, did you get sued, like that game goes away. And that's frankly why we're seeing ETH outperform right now, because people are recognizing that all the applications, primarily DeFi, but everything else that's being built on top of Ethereum, are actually going to continue and persist and not have to run the regulatory whack-a-mole game of did you get caught up in that or did you not? Because there's just going to be more clarity. And eventually there will be a market structure bill that defines all of this stuff. But until then, and it will probably take a while, until then, you're going to have sort of a safe harbor until we figure that part out. The other kind of takes that I heard that are interesting is and kind of counterintuitive in a way, but there are, given the fact that it looks like it's going to be a red sweep, it's possible that crypto as a new legislative initiative gets deprioritized for a while, given that they will probably want to take on larger things like immigration, tax reform, government spending, kind of the things that would be higher leverage opportunities, just given the way that the White House and Congress are looking like they'll be situated. And so it's possible that we kind of have this like safe harbor, nothing really happens for a while. And I think that that's actually a good thing for crypto because it gives us more time to develop, more time to reshore a lot of these protocols. I've heard from, Anatoly came out and said that, what about Breakpoint USA next year? People are getting excited. Kieran from Alluvium is like, I didn't think that I'd be moving back to the States, but now I'm considering it. Like there's kind of a renewed excitement around entrepreneurship in the US, which I think is fundamental. And it will be really exciting to see that. But I also would just say to everybody out there, don't hold your breath on legislation. It will happen, but it may take a while, especially given, the relative priorities of this administration.
Brooklyn permissionless. That's what I hear as well.
Yeah, it's dude. We like this. We've always thought the U.S. is the market to win, and yeah, it was a little bit of a bet for sure. But that's where all of our conferences are basically laid out is in the U.S. And that's the thing to me. Like Michael, completely hear you and agree that it's going to take a little longer than everyone would ultimately like to pass through like the FIT bill and stuff like that. In the meantime, I think that the most impactful thing here is that people aren't worried about getting arrested or sued or regulated by enforcement anymore. And I think what you're going to see is an enormous amount of people flood back to the US. Even if you rewind the clock back and you remember just what the conference scene in the US looked like in 2021 and 2022 versus 2024, it's a night and day difference. And I think that's about to happen in a huge way. So yeah, shameless shill here, but we got DAS in March and permissionless Brooklyn, baby. East Bushwick.
I love it.
Yeah, teaming up.
I think the other thing that I think about is like We probably not surprising, but we get asked for our price targets a lot.
Really?
Which we are not making on this podcast.
No, I mean, but like,
But this is
you
still
know,
financial advice, right? Like, that's right.
this podcast has turned into financial advice.
No, it hasn't.
But like, I think
Somewhere
it's always
Adam
been
just
a
sat up.
question. Oh my God. I mean, look, like all the regulatory stuff has hit us hard or harder than the projects. And like, I'm personally breathing a sigh of relief now that, we're not going to be hopefully subject to these surveillance sweeps. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens, but like on the price target side, like it's always been tough where the whole year it's like, well, in the fullness of time, and I would define that in like, our lifetimes, like, yeah, I do think Bitcoin will go to 1 million. But like, if it's Kamala or if it's Trump, like there's two different timelines. And I think like the timeline leap hypothesis of like, it's not a super cycle, but like we're now just on a fundamentally different trajectory is probably true to some extent. And that's how I personally think about it. It's just, you wake up and it's just a probably 3 or 4x more bullish environment on a 3 or 4x more compressed timeline. Whereas, if I thought Bitcoin was going to hit 1 million and, our lifetimes under, Kamala, and then we'd get through that and we'd figure out what's next. Now it's a lot different. And I think there's a lot of people who are underinvested in crypto, and the pressure to chase the market is going to be immense, especially from here until year end. We've talked about, what's the most bullish time of the year, and like what are my personal best crypto memories. It's always when I'm like holed up in some cold location in the middle of winter. All the summer ones are terrible. Summer is usually like net worth 10x's. Then it's like you rent a house in some like Malibu or something, and then you're sitting in this Malibu house being like, well, my net worth just got cut in half again, so I guess this isn't quite as great as I thought it was. But I don't think that's going to happen again. I think it's going to be a very bullish year end. People are going to have to chase. And I think the other thing is like the bear market was the exact right time horizon for people to capitulate on a lot of their tokens. Like we've heard some big funds capitulated on Sol, near the bottom. I think you kind of saw that happen with ETH as well, this summer. Rumors about, a large fund that got a margin call and had to sell all their ETH or something like it. And now people are kind of reset, and I think a lot of them are still underexposed somehow.
The other thing I'd say is everybody, I don't know, we were watching the election results live, and it's like, well, people were like, why isn't Bitcoin at 100K? And it's like, guys, you got to understand, if we're talking about money that's already like on a platform, ready to go, ready to buy Bitcoin just because the election results come in, like that's like drops in the bucket in comparison to what we're really talking about, which ultimately will be flows of new money coming into the space. And that new money is going to take weeks to months to happen. And so the fact that, Bitcoin isn't already at 80K or 85 or 100K, I think is ultimately a good thing, because people are still evaluating where their cash positions are. They have to move money around. They're going to start buying the ETFs. Like this is going to be an end of the year timeframe as to where you see, all these assets end up. And so the longer it takes to get there, I think the better from a long-term perspective. And you don't want the flash in the pan, burning too hot perspective.
Yeah, we're not playing for cousin Timmy's, Binance money. It's like there's much larger forces at play now. Don't you see this?
Well, it's also Bitcoin is much I mean, we got an all-time high during the election. Be a little reasonable here in terms of people's expectations. And Bitcoin is so much larger than it used to be. But I agree with you. And this is what I'm also very excited for. Is I know we've talked about it on this pod before. It's been a great last 12 months or whatever for price action, but it doesn't feel like there's a lot of new money or new people coming into the space. And my hope would be that changes. And I don't know, you're starting to see positive signs all over the place. Like the DeFi stuff, I can't tell if this is just Coop and this is how I want it to work, but I feel like it kind of is actually working. You had the first like real sizable bid for DeFi coins in about as long as I can remember. And you also had Athena, Wintermute put out a proposal to turn on the Athena fee switch. So you got some of those staking emissions go to staked ENA holders. First of all, by the way, game theory wise, it's a great move for Athena. Really smart. If everyone's going to do it, just lead the pack. Really smart. But yeah, I would hope. I don't know. I like the meme coins are fun. They're great. I own some of them, but I would love it if we could refocus capital and attention onto real businesses. As cheesy as that sounds, like it's kind of what we're doing here. So yeah, I would hope that.
I haven't been tracking the meme coins, but like the top performers on CoinGecko are basically the DeFi leaders, at least the ones with like a real, 500 million plus market cap. I think it's like the expectation versus reality. Expectation was like Donald Trump wins. It's like a meme coin, bacchanal, no rules, no parents, ice cream for dinner. Fuck it. And I think the reality is like, well, those probably persisted in either administration, but the thing that really would have gotten hurt by Kamala is DeFi. And so it's just like kind of natural to see this starting to ramp, which is great. Michael, you gotta mute while you're on the computer, bro.
Sorry.
You're good, dude. You're good. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I don't know, DeFi is, a lot of us probably have a little bit of a soft spot for DeFi if you live through DeFi summer, and still to this day, I think it's the thing that there's a lot of far off use cases that people are really excited about, but it's definitely the most material, real thing that works today with tangible benefits. And so, yeah, I mean, who wouldn't be happy to see that working and getting rewarded? And yeah, it would be cool if you could return some capital to token holders. Like, this is all ridiculously positive. And this all happened, like, we're speaking 36 hours out from when we got the results here. So yeah, I feel, and just to cap it off, like, because I've been talking to, I was talking to a mutual friend of ours actually, and he was just like, US based DeFi founder, and he was like, yeah, man, I didn't realize how stressed I was before all of this. And I feel him. I know you guys feel. Vance, I saw your tweet about the stress of running the fund. Yano and I have felt that too. This is why it feels like a weight off. It's kind of like, why were we ever punished so hard? What was the anti-crypto army, man? That's like the most
there were some things that transpired that were not great. I think we were punished disproportionately for them, but like the SEC in the US can take away your ability to manage money overnight. Like they are your regulator, you submit to them, you get examined by them. If you fuck up, they can, and it's up to them, right? It's like there's this own internal court that they have. They can just clip your wings and be like, that framework thing you used to do? Nah, that's over. So that is as tight of a line as you can possibly walk. DeFi founders, I feel like they may have had it somewhat easier in the sense that they don't have a direct regulator, but probably somewhat harder in the sense that like the things that they can get charged for were so much broader than what the fund managers were engaging in, that like there's more existential risk of like, good news, you're moving to Mexico. And we know teams that have moved to Mexico City, and are now moving back. Like, we're literally onshoring these jobs in real time. And, there's not like, we're not building cars here. It's not like we're building, 1,000 new jobs in the US, but it's just great to see that like these high income jobs that are frankly more geographically distributed than what Silicon Valley is used to are coming back. And I think SF is a huge beneficiary. Our office is in SF. That's where we're based. New York is probably a beneficiary, but I wouldn't be surprised to see places like Austin also pop up.
Yeah, totally. Also depends, the SF stuff, you guys would have a better view than me being on the ground, but I feel like SF is going through, like, the AI stuff is really benefiting San Francisco again, and far out. But, I know a lot of people are very excited about this intersection of AI and crypto. Who knows? Maybe there's something substantial there on some time horizon. Hey everyone, this episode is brought to you by Index Co-op and their new product, the Leverage Suite, which I highly recommend that you check out. Click the link in the bottom of the show notes. Now, disclaimer, whenever it comes to leverage, do your own research. This is not financial advice, all of that good stuff. Don't bet more than you can lose. But if you are going to lever up, you might as well not pay an arm and a leg and save a ton of money and use Index Co-op's Leverage Suite. So the way that they actually achieve these savings is pretty cool. They leverage the power of money Legos, DeFi, in this case, Uniswap and Aave. So the cost of carry for this trade is actually based on the funding rate of Aave as opposed to perp dexes, which tend to be much more variable and higher overall. Additionally, perp dexes will also charge you usually based on the entire open interest, so the leverage exposure that you have as opposed to just the amount of money that you put in, which is what Index Co-op is doing here. And the result of what you get is just an ERC20, which gives you something like 2x ETH. So if you want to lever up and you want to save money doing it, I highly recommend that you go check out the Index Co-op Leverage Suite. Very, very cool. Thank you very much, Index Co-op, for making this episode possible. Hey everyone, this episode is brought to you by Supra, the new blazing fast, vertically integrated L1, which helps you scale your dApp. If you are a builder, you're probably dealing with some combination of cost, complexity, and fragmentation of existing solutions. So if you're building over an ETH L2 land, everything's feeling a little bit fragmented at the moment. And if you're building in Solana, everything is fast and on one layer, but maybe you're limited in terms of what you can do with your AppSpace. So Supra is rolling out a new product called Supra Containers. So you can head over to supra.com/containers. To learn more. They offer dedicated customizable app spaces running on Supra's 500,000 TPS Layer 1 blockchain. That gives you complete control over gas tokens and fees. So some cool things you can do, you get the freedom you can use your own token, create local fee markets, or even go gasless, whatever you want. So this product isn't live yet, but because you are a faithful listener of Bell Curve, you get notified first. So head over to supra.com/containers. Thank me later. Hey everyone, this episode is brought to you by Fuel Labs, who's unveiling their new high-performance Ethereum L2 Fuel Ignition. Many of you know Fuel as the launcher of the first optimistic Stage 2 rollup on Ethereum with Fuel V1, and now they're launching Ignition to address some of the creeping centralization concerns around some L2 architectures today. And if you like nerding out about the tech, there's a lot of reasons to get excited about Ignition, including how they solve state sustainability and performance execution. They have this UTXO asset-centric architecture that's very, very cool. But there's a lot of other reasons to love it. Super easy to use. You can either use a Fuelet wallet or your existing Ethereum or Solana-based wallet like Phantom or MetaMask or whatever it is. There are cool apps that you can experiment with. And again, like I said at the top of the program, they're launching phase 2 of their points program. So click the link at the bottom of the show notes, head over, start having fun on Fuel Ignition today, and just tell them that I sent you. All right, one thing, I don't want to bring it back to politics, but I would want to get your guys' take on the Polymarket stuff. So I was actually watching this. I was in Montana, and I was sitting there watching all of this stuff with my parents. And, without getting into their political takes, like they, were slightly less than excited to see the Orange Man win. And, so we're watching this election, and we've got like MSNBC on in the background. I'm like glued to Polymarket, Twitter, and Bitcoin. And I'm just watching this. And at one point, all the swing states just flipped like almost at the same time. And they went limit up. His odds went from 60%, 60 some percent to 85%. And I saw Bitcoin ripping. I was telling my parents, I think he kind of got it. It seems like it's on lock. And it was like a totally different universe. I was watching a completely different election happen on TV. And it was just interesting to see the information bubbles were so different. And I would just be curious what your guys' take was on basically the two different elections that happened that night.
Polymarket is one of the big winners alongside crypto over the last 48 hours. I think, one of the concepts that I use to describe Polymarket, everybody that I talk to who frankly probably in these situations leans left normally looks at Polymarket and says, oh, it's just a bunch of international people. They don't even understand our markets. They don't get it. And what people don't understand is, okay, people have VPNs. I'm sure there are US people who are making bets on US elections. Yeah. Surprise. But B, the construct that Polymarket is based around is what's called Keynesian beauty contest. And what this means is you're not betting money based off of who you think will win. You're betting money based off of who you want to win. You're betting money based off of who you think other people will vote for. And that construct is similar to the French national who made those bets. Switching the question around from who do you think you want to win or who do you think should win to who do you think your neighbor will choose to win is a fundamental, and putting money behind it is a fundamentally different construct from a market structure perspective that I don't think people fully quite get yet. And anybody who's been in crypto markets or markets in general understands this. I heard people on the Compound podcast being like, well, I don't even know if it's a real market. There's no order book. There's no it's like, well, yes, there is. There's market makers. Actually, SIG is one of the market makers behind it, apparently. So there is a large amount of financial infrastructure behind these platforms. But what you change with, Keynes's beauty contest and in the history there, just a quick anecdote is in London, I think in the 20s, Keynes ran this experiment and said, listed 1 through or 10 photos of women and basically said, which women do you think is most attractive? And they got people's public opinion on that. And then they switched it and they said, who do you think other people would think is the most attractive person? And that flip changed the dynamics completely. And I think that construct is just a fundamentally different way of looking at markets and market structure, where you can ask binary questions and get to market resolution pretty clearly. And the fact that it's liquid enough means that it happens in real time and it happens faster than you're going to see, polling data or you're going to see voting data come in. So I think if we were to take this model and apply it at similar scale to other type situations, people have talked about sports, people have talked about, movies and music and award shows. Like there are definitely a lot of interesting sub markets that I think you can apply this concept to. Probably not with the same energy and fervor that you saw with, the 2024 US election, but I do think that there's going to be a lot of use cases for Polymarket and for binary options going forward that are going to hit, consumer appeal, especially now that there's so much money on the platform and so much attention on it. You got Shane on CNBC this morning, talking about Polymarket, and Joe's pretty excited about it. I mean, people are going to get excited about this. I am optimistic that Polymarket will have, a real resounding success going forward.
I think I caught Shane, the founder of Polymarket, went on All In that night, and I didn't watch. They recorded for like 4 hours or something. I didn't watch it, but I wanted to see what his response was around, because there's been a lot of. I was in Kansas City visiting a friend about a week ago, and I saw some of our mutual friends' parents, and they were describing, and I just kind of sat there and listened, how Polymarket was manipulated, and there were whales that were pushing around the election and trying to interfere with the election. I just kind of registered then, like that's interesting that's what people think. And Shane addressed that on this podcast, and his perspective was, one, I feel like that never really just passed the sniff test with me in general. I think there's better ways to spend that money. It just never passed the sniff test that it made sense to me to do. But the other thing is, Polymarket isn't the house, right? There's another side. So when someone bets $30 million or whatever this guy bet, someone else is taking the other side of that trade. So I don't know. I mean,
one other way to think about it is these are all just signals. And let's go back and look at the ticker tape of all of these. Ann Seltzer in Iowa said that Trump was going to lose Iowa by 3 or 4%. She was off by 15 or 16%. Let's talk about, market manipulation in terms of the pollsters and what they put out, and whether or not, the accuracy that they, stick their name and their brand behind was not something that wasn't market manipulation as well. And to your point, when there's a financial incentive involved, I think that there's far less manipulation, because you're talking about losing value, significant amounts of value, if you get it wrong. And I think that, once again, it's not something you can compare and contrast to polls. These are totally different signals. These are totally different, outcomes. But with financial incentives involved, it's a much stronger signal, in my opinion.
I would agree with that. And I think there's I don't know. It's tough to not, like, Blockworks is a media company. I have a lot of sympathy for media and some of the criticism that it gets. Like, first of all, even like calling elections, right? Like, they have to use some very specific verbiage, otherwise they'll get sued. Like, people are making fun of them for saying too close to call. It's like they don't have any. They have to do that, right? And it is different in between. Polymarket it's a betting market-based mechanism versus media actually has to wait to call the state until it basically can't go the other way, right? Like, there's just a higher hurdle rate to getting it right for them. But it's hard to not be pretty critical of both the coverage leading up and how wrong they got this whole thing. And so I don't know. I think Polymarket ends up, or prediction markets or something, ends up being, I don't know if it eats or replaces the media, but it definitely feels like a permanent data point that people are going to use to counterbalance some of the media. And in a sense, it's really objective, right? Like, it's just markets. People are. So
I mean, not to shit on mainstream media, but to shit on mainstream media, they completely miss this. I mean, look at the CVS stuff, look at all the pollsters and everybody who is behind them. Supposedly that all the polling companies have changed their algorithm, changed their methodology, but they still missed completely. 3 times in a row now. And I think I tweeted this yesterday, but I think mainstream media has to take a real long, hard look in the mirror and kind of reevaluate their priorities if they want to stay relevant.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And there needs to be a lot of self-reflection. Well, I don't want to zoom out too much on the politics, but yeah, I think self-reflection after something like this, where there was such...
All right, I'm calling it. No more talking about this. We're done.
All right,
you guys are just literally beating a dead horse that's like
I
already
know.
pulp.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you're definitely right.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Here's a.
You guys good?
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, we're good.
All right, cool.
Okay, let me ask you though on the so here's I saw someone tweet this. Let me pull it up. That something like 89% of people that bet on Polymarket ended up losing money. I'll pull up the tweet here, which is...
I don't know if that's by P&L or by user, but I mean, it's better than meme coins.
It is better than meme coins. And it actually roughly tracks, if you look at what's the European version of Robinhood, eToro, they have to disclaim the percentage of traders that trade options that lose money, and it's same neighborhood. I think it's 86% or something like that. So I would be curious, where do you guys see here? I'm going to pull up Blockworks as a dashboard on this. Their volumes have obviously been doing extremely well. Everything is way up and to the right. It looks like a parabola. Do you guys have any thoughts on what these numbers look like, I don't know, a month from today? Because some percentage here, we break it out by the percentage of trading that's election related. So it's like it's 65%. I would say also that some of this other non-election related markets, the election stuff is a loss leader, or it's what gets people to the site and then they bet on other stuff. But I would just be curious, because Polymarket had an unbelievable week. I am curious, like the criticism has always been how much staying power does this have post-election? Do you guys have any thoughts on, continued relevancy? Is this the type of thing that becomes super relevant around the election? Yeah, I don't know. Any thoughts on Polymarket?
It depends on like, I think Polymarket and Pump.Fun have basically the same insight that like markets are media. And you see that with what Pump.Fun has shipped, which is like live streaming. You can upload a video into a meme coin. Like they're trying to basically like force that convergence. Polymarket has kind of like more of a mechanical Turk operation of like, what do people want to bet on? Set up the market, get the liquidity, get people interested, tweet it out. Like there's going to be a lot less velocity for Polymarket. And so I think like what comes next for Polymarket, I'm just like on the site on the side. It's like still some like election hangover stuff. But I think, one of the apps that I've been using is called Adjacent News. And it's pretty interesting. It's basically like news scored with Polymarket and other prediction market aggregators. And that would be like how you get that to higher velocity. I think what Pump Fund benefits from is like you have this kind of like whale, maybe call it a cabal, maybe call it whatever. But like there's only a few people that are responsible for most of these meme coins. For Polymarket, I don't know if you still have that like power user. Like, is Theo going to start betting on, what the Canadian election is, or like if this headline is accurate? Like, it's like, I see that as much less likely. And, you've seen the Polymarket charts from 2020 go down and kind of stay dormant until this election cycle. I would expect some of that, but they've got a lot more capital. They've got Shane, who's, very smart on the product side, and you'll probably see them get regulated. I don't know if that helps or hurts them, but like it's them, and it's like it's no longer just them. It's them and Kalshi. And Kalshi is pretty formidable, and their CEO is pretty good too.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it ultimately ends up going. I don't have any super strong opinions about it myself. I just feel like it's cool to see. It was very cool to see Polymarket on the world stage in the way that it was. Just felt like a win overall for crypto, and it felt like something that penetrated mainstream awareness in a way that few apps outside of Coinbase and Binance and like FTX at one point penetrated. So just kind of a dub for the industry, I would say. Let me ask you guys this, a little off topic, but what do you guys think of Futarchy? So this was something I was kind of thinking to myself when I was watching. Like, hey, okay, Polymarket did pretty well here on the prediction market side. I agree. I think there's an element of real staying power when it comes to markets being a complement to more subjective media. And then I sort of said, well, Futarchy is kind of based on the same things, right? It's like market-based, but it's decision outcomes for policy or theoretically in companies. There are a couple of Solana protocols, I believe Drift, which, and I think Jito actually is instead of, they've got a grants program that's running, and instead of having an administrator, they're using Futarchy for people to bet on who should get funded, etc. So I don't know. It kind of made me think about it, and I was not super positive on Futarchy before, but just squinting at it and like, maybe I should give this a second look. I don't know. Have you guys thought too much about this at all?
I mean, this is one of the original ideas of like crypto governance posted by Vitalik way back in the day. Um, I think there's certainly something to it. I do think it's like a little bit experimental and kind of like, when people were focused on we should all start DAOs instead of like what do these DAOs do? So I think I think we're in low hanging fruit season, basically. Like there's so much low hanging fruit in crypto that we can just pick over and make it better. I think we'll get to Futurarchy in time. And it's like the thing that separates crypto from all of the industries at the end of the day is the cyberpunk ethos, is the willingness to like push the boundaries of like how do you govern things? How do you build something that's not a company, that's a distributed organization? And like we should never lose sight of those ideals or those ideas. But the thing about where we are right now is there's like a lot of blocking and tackling work to do. And it's always kind of the question of like, can you get the velocity right? Pump Fund got the velocity dead on. Shit tons of meme coins, 2% on each, run it through, you're making $200, $300 million a year. I would say, a lot of the DAO experiments got it wrong because the velocity wasn't there. There weren't that many people who wanted to start DAOs. The refresh rate of dead ones to new ones was really low. It didn't really take off. Futurarchy may be an idea where you really only have one good shot at it. And you need to do it at scale with something that is revenue generating and can be governed in a more mechanistic way. But like DAO governance and how it all works is going to be one of the major focuses of what these organizations look like going forward. Like we still don't have clarity on whether a DAO is legal or not. Like we think it's legal. We take that position. The government sometimes takes the opposite position. You have like Ookie DAO where they're making judgments in the absence of anybody even showing up to the court. All these things are now on the table, and it's going to take a long, long time for these to be sorted out. And I agree with Michael. I don't think anything's coming down the pike imminently. They're going to take their time. They're going to stop regulating by enforcement, and then they're going to take a major swing at a canonical bill for the entire industry. It's wild. We have the House, we have the Senate, we have the president. It's like this is the most bullish possible setup you could have asked for.
The only thing I'd add to that is, I mean, you could also look back at history and the development of the internet and the application categories that were, talked about in the 90s. People tried social networks in like the mid 90s. People tried social networks in the late 90s. But it took until digital cameras were actually viable, until you had, bandwidth capabilities to have hundreds of photos and not just your MySpace 8 photos, profile pics. Like there are kind of infrastructure level, or in this case, potentially regulatory changes that need to happen. But I think we've even been going back to like 2020, 2021, it was like tokens as a new capital asset, a new construct for incentivization, but also DAOs as a new governance framework and a new construct for organizations. And I think that we kind of understand like all of the things that are happening in the future of crypto. It's just a question of when they become viable. And changes like this are definitely going to speed up that process in terms of the timelines that we can expect DAOs to become universally recognized as an organizational construct. But it will take regulatory changes, and it will take understanding about how does money move through these DAOs? Like how are people, like what are the rules and regulations around how people can be incentivized to work at DAOs? But I think we all know that DAOs will be up there eventually as a form of organization similar to companies. And you could be an individual developer contributing to a DAO and getting paid, and like that's your job, and that's something that's totally fine. I think, frankly, things like Uber and Lyft are another example that are pushing people in this direction, where your job doesn't have to necessarily be a W-2 salaried job where you're showing up every day and you work for a company and that's all you do. It can be something where you have a less regular cadence and a more contribute as you go type model, and potentially working for multiple at the same time. And I think the future of work will revolve a lot more around this. It may just take, 5, 6, 7 years where we thought it would happen, this year, next year.
Yeah, on that point, it's something that I've always liked about DAOs, or kind of squinted at them and found they made sense, which is there's a couple of different trends when it comes to just how people do work, which is one, workforce is way more global and way more mobile than it used to be. And people are much more okay with part-time jobs. Like the relationship in between employer and employee is much more transactional than it used to be in the 50s when, you worked for the same company for 40 years, then you got your gold watch and you retired. That is kind of dead. And I think DAOs are very well suited to take up the mantle there. And so
Yeah, work is a more fluid relationship.
the one other thing on the regulatory front that I would at least be excited for, and it could be an unlock for DAOs sourcing better decision making in labor, is there's a very harmful precedent set by UkiDAO, where there's no concept of limited liability in between a DAO and its delegates, for instance. And so that prevents, as I'm sure you guys know, oftentimes delegates who don't want that headache or liability, but B, there are a lot of investors who probably have opinions or would be more active in governance, and you're precluded because you don't want to get sued if you have a huge percentage of stake in the protocol. And I'm just going to keep pointing out over the next couple of weeks about there are these weird sort of invisible, unless you have reason to have knowledge about it, these weird like pieces of red tape that are just preventing really easy wins. And so I know right now it's kind of popular to say DAOs don't make sense or they're broken or they don't work, but I think with a better regulatory environment, some stuff that hasn't been working could work much better. So
Exactly.
reason to be excited. Honestly, I didn't really have any other big stories this week. I feel like all the oxygen was focused on the election.
Everyone's tired from a big few nights. I think no one's even like euphoric. It's just like, man,
yeah,
he did it.
I know, dude. It's like light at the end of the tunnel. And I wonder, I'm going to DEF CON. I'm flying out tomorrow, so I'll see what the vibes are.
Ooh.
I'm sure they'll be
Long flight.
Dude, it's like my first leg is 19 hours or something insane. Yeah, it's going to be brutal. Yeah. I think I'm flying into Hong Kong and then doing like a 2-hour jump. But anyway, so wish your boy luck. Yeah.
Best of luck out there, and congratulations to everyone. And if you are sad, well, better luck next time.
All right, fellas, we can end it there. Appreciate you both.
All right, peace.
Yeah.